Can I get a motion for I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Public Safety for the City of Bloomington on February 21st. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting from January 17th, regular session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Can we get verbal certification of payroll?
Yes.
From January 13th to January and 27th as well. January 27th. Okay. Police Department business. You're up.
Sorry. Everybody's out of sorts. Yeah. Deputy Chief Oldham will present the stats.
All right, this is for the month of January. There we go. So you notice we had 4,316 calls for service. That is an increase from the month previous. I'm sorry, we had 5,108 calls for service, which is an increase from the month previous by almost 800 calls for service. Continuing to lead the way is the disturbances and some of the other associated calls for service that we get on a regular day. Going to the next one. As you look at most of these, and I can go over them in a little more depth if you want to, you'll see an increase in most of the categories, particularly as we get into the next slide.
Can I just bring up, I was
Sure.
curious to know about the uptick in January in the, let's see, the very first
The calls for service block.
data point. Yeah.
We see that every year in January, coming out of December into January. And plus, if you remember correctly, early January was particularly mild. After the first maybe week or so, we got into good weather and we started seeing more and more people out.
Yeah, I think it was more in comparison to last year.
Last year, we still had COVID. We still had some of the bars and restaurants that were closed, or at least had modified hours. So now you're kind of back to where we were 2018, early 2019, before COVID really set in.
That makes sense.
So, sorry, I have to use the glasses here. So if you look at these, you're going to see a rise in just about every category as we go through, whether that be from simple assault to felony assault to intimidation. The crimes against person category continue to rise. We did go up also in crimes against property. That would be something that we would expect when our calls for service go up. So it's not something that's completely abnormal when you see that kind of rise from one month to the next. Even one year to the next, again, because remember we had COVID. If you go on to the next slide as well. So any questions on the specific types of crime and or anything to that event, I can address it just a little bit more. Okay. So
Are there any statistics that are shocking to you or anything that seems out of the ordinary?
no, all these are what we would expect, particularly when you have good weather. In the early part of the year, you have a lot of people returning from break. You have a lot of people, again, now that we're outside of COVID, we're outside of the restrictions as far as bars, restaurants, stores being open later. We started to see some of the major entertainment venues reopen to a fullest degree that we've seen them in a year and a half. So you're going to see more people out and about. And unfortunately, that friction that results for interpersonal communications, we're going to get more calls on it as we get out and about.
Is quiet nights, are those calls reflected here?
They'll be in there as well, yes, but we really haven't. The Quiet Nights program, as it were generally where we bring officers in an overtime to particularly address it running into Little 500 and then the subsequent summer. This is the standard shift, is doing their abilities as they do, answering the calls as they come about.
I don't normally ask a question
Sure.
that relates to me personally, but I had a situation a couple weekends ago. It was super mild. And I live in an area where there are students, and
Yes.
there were parties going on till 3 in the morning. And I personally had to call about it. And I just want to know how those are handled in the off-season.
Well, even in the on-season, everything we do is based on priority.
Yeah.
So if you have a shooting in one area of the city and you have a noise complaint, it's going to have to wait.
Right.
If you have an accident with injuries, the noise complaint waits. And unfortunately, that's not a floating, or it is a floating thing. So as soon as something pops up, that noise complaint may have held for 30, 35 minutes. and there's no cars available to answer it, and then whenever it's getting ready to be answered, and they have to divert to a fight or a burglary in progress or something else that's of a higher priority, unfortunately, it goes back down, and it just keeps hanging there until we have somebody close enough to answer it.
So it's really during the little 500 time, those are the periods where you plan and you staff?
We try and put on extra staffing at the time because it just becomes overwhelming. We'll never get to them unless we do. We try and address everything as soon as we can, as soon as we have the available assets to do it. Sometimes it's pretty quick. Other nights, it's going to be a bit.
Okay.
I mean, I wish it were otherwise, but you can only make 8 to 10 officers stretch so far. And as those runs come in based on priority, we have to answer them that way.
Understood.
So.
I don't know if this is a question for Chief Dekoff, but I sent materials about a catalytic converter program a couple months ago, and we can address this, maybe at next month's. But I know that at least in some of the neighborhoods without garages, that the catalytic converter theft is on the rise right now. Is that maybe something that we can look at, like programs, other agencies like Chicago Police Department are doing to tag, converters and stuff to make theft a little bit more difficult, or just to add that barrier, like that other layer?
Well, I don't want to speak for the chief, but what
Okay.
I will say, we're tracking those weekly in our crime analysis, and our thefts are actually going down, not going up, which is good. I know there's one retail installation that is kind of putting forth a program like that. I don't want to speak for them because we haven't been in communications other than just tangentially, hey, we may do this. So it's something that may come up. I don't know if the chief wants to address it more than that, but we are keeping very close tabs on that because of that.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Any kind of connections I can help with too, please feel free. I'll shoot you my email and stuff.
Sure.
Happy to make calls to any, dealerships or Jiffy, whatever, automotive repair places with lifts and stuff. That might be helpful.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, or do you want to move on? Okay, if you'll go on to the next slide. And one more, I'm sorry. We'll catch up with each other. You see things are remaining fairly consistent. Go ahead, one more. This is the screen dealing with both juvenile referrals and adult arrests. Again, as call volume rises, so will likely arrest rows, which we did see them go up to that 163 mark that we saw posted for January. Juvenile referrals, however, went up as well. Again, they went down. They halved themselves from last year, so that was a good instance there. As we move on to the next slide, you see domestic violence cases. They decreased by, quite frankly, just a little bit. You're right, just stay that where you're at. This is not a complete hate crime reporting. However, there has been one in this quarter, which will relate more to you next month when we finish the hate crime reporting period. And you'll see here that is the hate crime at the 4th Street bus stop near the B line. That is making its way through the system at this point in time into potentially the federal realm, where they're going to accept charges for it and take that charge and run with it at the federal level and not leaving at the state level as well. We did have increase in thefts from motor vehicles compared to December of 2022. Again, not abnormal this time of year, not abnormal, just that's a cyclical crime, it seems, where we'll have people stealing more from cars that are left unlocked. They'll sometimes smash windows to get them, but normally what we see is they're left unlocked with things inside of them that people can see. And that's what's a crime of opportunity, and they take the opportunity to do it, and they're quickly in and quickly out of the area. Moving on to training, this month we had 779.5 hours, which is about 50% rise from 2022. As you'll see some of the highlights there, we had officers going to instructor development course, officers going to physical and tactics instructor course. One officer attended the opioid overdose death investigation course. 4 officers attended lead investigator of an officer-involved shooting course. We have mandatory training blocks for the officers to get their mandatory training for the year. This month we had 11 officers attend those. That's a thing where we hold it at the department, and it's taught by our instructors as well as other instructors that we bring in from the outside. Every officer will go through that. 11 of them went through this month, and those 2-day training blocks continue roughly until September. So you'll see similar numbers of officers each month. For K-9, we had 33.75 hours. For the CERT team, you had 70 hours. Civil disturbance, you had 70 hours. And dive, you had 7 hours. Dive's a little bit limited by the weather, and of course, the coldness of the water doesn't necessarily rise whenever the temperatures rise, so they have to be particularly careful of that. As far as community engagement, there was 11 this month, 0 in 2022 for 21.7 hours. We involved 15 BPD personnel. Some of the community engagement events prior to this were the DRO weekly meetings, some of the DRO other meetings that they do throughout the month, Monroe County Humane Society outreach, Officer Escovel represented BPD at an event there for the Latinas, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to say that, Literes. So she went and took care of that. We had tour of BPD in the training center for Stonebelt clients came in. And as we move on, social workers this month had 37 referrals, which is an increase of 2 from 2022. Total number of contacts is 382, which is just a little bit down from 2022. And some of the highlights there you see where they worked with a new client experiencing homelessness, trying to locate some emergency shelter for that person prior to some severe weather was coming in. They assisted a juvenile and their family with Youth Services Bureau due to some behavioral concerns. That's continuing. And they assisted a client with establishing a primary care provider and a dentist. I believe that's the first time they'd seen the dentist ever. And they were able to establish that. Community service specialists, some of their totals. Again, some of these they're assisting on. They're not necessarily the ones responsible for the calls. Like if you see domestic in progress or the traffic stops, they're not actually working those. They're helping either blocking traffic and or standing by to tow a vehicle or something to that degree. Letters of appreciation and commendation, I believe we had one this month. Pointed out to us from Bloomington Hardware where we had a crash that went into the front of the store. Luckily, we didn't have any serious injuries there. Occasionally these things happen. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but occasionally they do. Luckily, no one was seriously injured and they were back in business pretty quickly.
If you notice in that picture, the fire department was cleaning up after us, so we appreciate all the work they do for us. I don't know how that worked out, but it does say Bloomington Police Department. Oh, there's fire department up there too, so we'll share that one. General business, this month we had the State of Public Safety report that the police department, the fire department, and community and family resources department had. I don't know if you were able to catch any of that. A lot of statistics were given, but some things that came out of it that I just wanted to talk generally about were the social worker that we're hiring for the dispatch center. We recently visited Columbus, Ohio. They have a program like that, and they're able to take certain calls and divert those to the social worker who then has social service agencies instead of public safety respond to those types of calls. So it's a way to kind of get people out of the system and into the appropriate area that they need help. So we're exploring that. We're in the process of taking applications. We've extended it. We didn't get very many the first time around, so we've extended that process to try to get more viable candidates for that position. The other thing that was announced was the mayor announced a new housing incentive to try to help with recruiting efforts. We're still finalizing the fine details of that, but that is something that should be going into effect fairly soon. If you don't know what it is, it's a $100,000 low-interest loan over 10 years that would be forgivable at the end of 10 years for an officer or a firefighter to buy a house in the city limits. So that's I don't know of any other agency in the country that's doing anything like that. So we're hopeful that will get us some more quality candidates. So that's it for general business. Purchases. I think you got some stuff on, there's some for a dispatch. It's a dispatch equalization payment. When we built the dispatch center, however many years ago it was a joint city-county effort, and so part of that is the city paid for part of it, the county paid for part of it. The county ended up paying the way it was set up, the city's paying the county back some of that money, so it's like the seventh, I think we're in the 7th year of a 10-year payment process with the county, so that was probably in the packet. And then there was $24,000 for architect fees on the showers building process while the city was looking at the purchase of that building. So personnel, next on there is personnel issues. I have to check my latest email that I just got with updates. We had 5 new officers start yesterday. The swearing in is tomorrow if you're able to attend that. I think it's at 11:30 here in council chambers. Of those 5, 2 were certified and 3 were not certified, and they will be attending the academy later this year. So we have currently 88 sworn officers out of 105 allocated. We have 2 more sworn applicants that are in the middle of a background investigation, so hopefully those will, they'll come through that and we'll be able to hire them within the next couple of weeks as well. The community service specialist, which is our non-sworn part of our department that responds to minor calls. We're in the process of doing interviews. There were 17 applicants left in the hiring process, and I believe we have 4 openings? 4 openings for that. Talked about the social worker hiring process. I don't know if you'll remember this, but in the budget for this year, there was a position put in the HR department titled the Talent Acquisition Specialist. It is a specialized recruiter to help police and fire recruit and hire more and new applicants. Those interviews were in the final stages of those, so hopefully we will be announcing that hire soon. And again, it's housed actually in HR, but we'll work closely with both police and fire. And I believe that is it for personnel.
And that's a net new position.
I'm sorry?
Is that a net new
Yes.
position?
But it's for us,
Yeah,
but in HR.
yeah,
Because we don't really know much about HR, so it's an HR position
yeah.
that will service us. So, and then, then last on the agenda, the CERT ARV deployment, we had 0 in January.
Can you remind me again about our staffing? So we're at like fully staffed, and if all of them are like on, on duty right now, or if there's some that are sick or on leave, like where those numbers are?
It really depends on the day.
Yeah.
Because we set minimum staffing levels on each shift and on days of the week.
Okay.
And so it really just depends on what it is. I can tell you with having the number of openings that we have, our staffing levels are way down.
Yeah.
And so on average shift, 8, it's 8 is the minimum. And that includes there'll be at least 1 supervisor on duty.
Okay.
Dekoff, I had a question as well. I'm really excited about the what you talked about in public safety today about the $100,000 for new officers. Is there any concern about existing officers and feelings of equity, or giving similar incentives to people who are already on the force here in Bloomington?
So that actually does apply to current officers.
Oh,
yeah, it's really an incentive to get people to live in the city limits. And so any current officer is available for that program. Now, there's only 10 spots per department.
Okay.
We have 10, fire has 10. So if those fill up, then it wouldn't be available to a new officer. So, but there's 10 spots to try. It really is a hiring and retention type thing to try to keep them, because it's basically a $10,000 payment every year for 10 years. That's what it is.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And I also wanted to say I haven't had a chance to watch the whole video yet, but I thought it was very. I'm sorry. It was. I thought it was really cool to see the police data in a cumulative way, right? Because we always see it from month to month and compare month to month. It had a big impact on me to actually see the numbers overall, and I think really notably, all of the numbers that seem to go very high up were, changes of 2, out of 6 or something like that, right? And that in all of the major areas, you've seen a lot of decrease in crime. And so I just thought, we maybe, I don't know if everybody else felt that way, but when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't noticed. Every month you tell us, oh, a little uptick, a little downtick, and so seeing it in sort of
Yeah, I mean, we can
way was
present
very helpful.
you more yearly and more historical information if you
I would find that
want to see
really
that
helpful,
too.
right? I would find that really helpful just because, I mean, seeing anything in a vacuum like that sometimes it's really hard to make those comparisons, and I think then sometimes we might overreact to, oh, there's been an uptick of catalytic converters or whatever, not seeing that in the overall context, I think is really helpful.
We can include that in next month's packet. We'll do just a slide with a kind of a multi-year overview of crime.
Can I add to that and ask? Oh, I didn't notice that.
That's right. It's really hard to hear out here, and so get close and speak loud so I can hear you.
Okay. I was just going to say along, I agree with that, and I found it really interesting to see the patterns during the pandemic, or at least the sort of virtual portions of the pandemic, and how some things went down and some things changed. And I'm wondering if when, not necessarily for the next meeting, but if there's a way to kind of convey this is where things were before the pandemic, this is where things are over the last couple of years, and then just, in the aims of some things went down pretty significantly during the pandemic, and whatever we can do to keep those numbers low, I think would be great to hear. So.
Keep people off the streets, and that'll help with our stats.
Fewer parties and
Close the university, that'll help with our stats. I do want to note that I watched the presentation, from last week and stuff. It was last week, right? I'm like, all the dates kind of run
Yeah, it
together.
was.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, was that? Yeah, and it was very well done with both the police and fire department.
We did better, but that's okay.
Very, very well done. And I had a kind of a quick question about the hires. So the 2 police hires that we have from other agencies, were they from Indiana, like Indiana agencies? I don't know if you're able, no?
One was from California and one was from Indiana.
Okay, it's just interesting to me to hear about that, so
Yeah.
thank you.
The one from Indiana, he actually got a job offer, I think it was late last year, but had trouble selling his house. So
Sure. It's
we
tough
held
time.
it open, and he ended up selling his house.
Yeah, awesome, well, thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry, unrelated to the other 2. So we'd been talking for the last couple of months about the incentives that we have for new officers, and whether or not what success we've seen or uptake on those offers. What's actually happening to get that information to prospective? I mean, are we sending that to current police officers in other departments saying, "Come here, we're way better"?
We try not to poach too much of other departments because we have a lot of departments that do that to us, and so it's kind of like. But we can post things at the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, which again is really kind of poaching because they're all there sponsored by another department that hired them. But it's kind of well known in the Indiana law enforcement community, who pays the best and, what the current, incentive programs are. And so that word travels pretty quickly, but we do send that information out for people who inquire about jobs so that they know what we have to offer, basically. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. It's okay. A little height difference. So, I'm Tanya Daffern. I'm the assistant chief. So I rank just below Deputy Chief Washell in the structure. So do you want to go to the next slide? We're doing our stats. So looking at our operational, we do have the historical So you have the last couple of years here. In January, we started out with more fires than what we have previously. Next slide, please. IU statistics. We look at the biggest part of IU is the false alarms. So we are currently in the hiring or interview stages next week for another deputy fire marshal, whose one of the main duties will be tracking down all the false alarms and why and trying to fix that. So but that is a joint project between IU and Bloomington Fire. So any questions with any of the numbers so far? Okay. Next slide, please. These are response times and goals, and you can see that our fire response time or turnout time, we want to be on the trucks in 1 minute and 20 seconds. We're not doing real well at that. So that is something that we are working on. First arriving within 4 minutes, and then the total fire response package, that's where we're at 100%. And this is out of just January stats, right? So January, really, we had one big structure fire. I'll reference that in a few minutes. Everybody was in there, was on scene. So the response package is 2 engines and an aerial truck. So all those were on scene within 8 minutes. So one big fire, everybody got there in time, so that's great. Makes a great stat there. EMS turnout, please back up. It's all right. EMS turnout time, we want to be moving in 1 minute. All right. And because you don't have gear to put on necessarily for that. And then on scene again in 4 minutes. The other turnout time, the bottom of the page, that is 1 minute 20 to get on the truck. And again, 4 minutes. So work to be done there.
How is
Yes,
this
sir.
data looking cumulatively year to date?
Year to date, I will have, like I said, I'm just doing January right now, but I said we could back up and look at the cumulative. But if you're interested in doing that, Chief Moore and I are talking about how better to do this visually, because that deadline, we have a lot of 1 minute and 5 second response time,
exactly.
right? Where's that? But you know what? I'm doing it. If it's 101, sorry, you didn't make it cut.
Right.
Right? So it's.
But there's
But
also,
if-
I mean, if it's one fire versus there were 5, over the,
Right. You know how it is with an average, the more
Exactly.
numbers you have,
You'll-
right, you'll
you'll
get
do
more
better.
play with the numbers, right? So, but when you have one, that's it, so.
Exactly.
So, all right. And then the next slide, please. These are our prevention, public engagement, just again for January. We did change some of the categories that we are tracking for inspections from what we had done last year. Last year, we counted pre-plans. This year, we are not. We kind of switched that with Knox Box. Knox Box, do you guys familiar with Knox Box? It's on the public building or a commercial building. It's the black box outside that has keys to the restaurant, so we don't have to necessarily break doors to get in unless we can unlock them, right? Or there'll be keys to the mechanical room or other secure areas in the building so that we don't have to do more damage than what's necessary. Of course, you see smoke or anything like that, we're breaking it down and not necessarily waiting for the key, right? So, but Knox Box, when we do that, we're, changes management, they change the locks, we go in, and they may have rearranged things, so maybe this new business has their important items in another room than what the other one. So take a look around and see what kind of fire hazards they are going to be or contend with there. So January wasn't great necessarily for public engagement, but again, we do a lot of that when it is nicer. We had the polar plunge, but that was this month, so that doesn't get to count. Next slide, please. These are our training hours. So our goal is roughly 30 to 35 hours per individual per month. So this month, like I said, we were at 43.94. So, and I know if you saw the presentation from last year, we were 43,000, overall. So that was like 103% of the goal for last year. Next slide, please. This is a new slide. This is for our mobile integrated healthcare. So we basically, with this, we have number of active clients that is 11 average visits per client is 4. So we get a referral either from another agency or from our crews who go on scene. The MIHs, some of them can take care of business in 1 or 2 visits. Sometimes it takes 8, but you're averaging 4 visits per 1 client to get them where they need to be. And so we look at the services engaged, 7 different services, 18 different agencies within Bloomington, that we've been involved with the patients. So we have our big wins. The client had been seen by 11 other service entities, no success. They were able to get him to accept transport to the emergency department, and he got emergency care there, and the doctor said he wouldn't have lasted till his next appointment, which was the following week. So he literally getting him to the hospital for emergency surgery that weekend made the difference in him surviving. So that was a big win, right, for our program and for him. But after that, the follow-up, once he got out of there, because he'd been living in a garage, right? So then they had to track down his identity. He couldn't remember all his social. They couldn't, it took a lot of agencies to get that, but MIHs were integral in high school transcript, and there was a lot of digging to get this gentleman his identity so he could be able to get to long-term care. So we looked at the super users for 911, those wins, when we'd been going 3 to 12 times a week. And once they really, and those are emergency calls when they come in, right? We're going, or if it's a lift assist, they're falling on the floor, we're taking care of those, the city fire is, rather than waiting for the ambulance, right? So, because the ambulance response time, but they're at minimum staffing as well. So we go and we make sure that they're not hurt, that all they need to do is get up off the floor. But again, 3 to 12 calls per week per patient, that's a lot of calls. So, but once our MIHs got in with them, got them the social services they need, we haven't been back. So, and it is follow up and make sure there's not any other ongoing issues. So if they do call 911, it's a true emergency. It's not this, I can't get back to my bed. So any questions?
Explain a little bit more how you complement each other. I mean, oftentimes, are you the first person on the scene before the actual ambulance takes them?
Okay. With fire, from the emergency response, yes, we
Yeah.
could be. So if it's a medical call, we're better placed, or maybe they're all responding from the new hospital on the east side and they're coming over here. Yeah, so a lot of times fire will get there first and initiate care. We're EMTs, so oxygen, CPR, bandaging, splinting, bleeding control, all the good stuff. And do that. If there is a call where they're there and the crews notice there's some social services that might help this person better, then they make a referral to the MIHs, and the MIHs follow up later. So they are in a non-emergency response vehicle, so they will, not that they can't go, they might call them, hey, if you guys aren't busy, come over. But for the most part, it is a non-emergency response later. And then they go in, assess, and then kind of look and see how they can engage social services to better help. What kind of services do they need? Do they need food? Do they need heat? Do they, what else can we help them with? So does that help
Yes,
answer the question?
it does.
So,
Yeah.
any other questions with the MIHs?
I'm curious if the public, and I know you do a lot of, the city does a lot of releases to the public about additional services. Has something gone out about this additional layer?
Yes, there has been. We are actually featured on I think it was RTV. I think it was this past Monday, or no, last Monday. It was, they taped it and then it was out. So it was just a quick little blurb about it. Some nice video of the fire station, right, and about the program, that it is mobile integrated healthcare. We're not social workers, we're mobile integrated healthcare through the fire department. But there has been, one of the mayor's office did a department blurb about it as well during the
Okay.
YouTube earlier this month. So, no, earlier in the program, we had that. So there is, and we had a posting for positions as well. So we were allotted 2 more. So we'll have a total of 4 when we're fully staffed in that department, which will be great. So Crawfordsville has 12, I mean, in this
Wow,
similar program.
Yeah.
So, but,
thank you.
anything else there? Okay. Letters? All right, so, okay, this is from, the first part's from the child, obviously, but this is the mom was writing about had participated in the union firefighter, Shop with the Firefighter for Christmas, and that event was in December at Target. And thank you for from that event. And then we had the headquarters, this letter basically wanted to say that, firefighters do more than just, put out the fire, but as some of the other community things that we are doing, Heroes Helping Hoosiers, the food drive, all the stations had a box. We were bringing in food, and public could bring in food and put them in for the food drive as well. And then the Shop with the Firefighter, Touch a Truck, our prevention officer does community engagement. Do businesses need to learn how to use a fire extinguisher? Things along those lines. Do safety visits, tours, stuff like that. So, and with that, this was a letter or a note from Kirk White at IU to Chief Moore. The fire that I referenced in January displaced some 40 IU students at the apartment building. So Red Cross and Dean of Students and Housing were really integral in getting everybody placed because there are so many apartments that were damaged and they couldn't go home. So thank you for that. And then Community Care Corporation, accept my sincere appreciation for the assistance I received from your department regarding medical and nursing home placement of Gerald King. He had found Gerald King 9 years ago sleeping in an abandoned vehicle here in Bloomington and prayerfully took him to his home, gave him food, shelter. During these years, he became his friend, and they'd never been a problem. But as he got older, developed various health issues. He couldn't care for him, and he reached out to every local resource, and this program was the only true assistance that we received, and with the help of Shelby Woods and her assistant, he's now being taken care of. He's the big win that we were referenced earlier on the other one. So this was the Reverend that was taking care of him. So, any other questions for this section for me? Save them all for Chief Washell.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. So general business. So we've been having station renovations. Station 5's been completed. Station 2 should be completed in approximately 2 weeks. That station is going to be a captain's quarters. It's going to give us additional 2 additional firefighters that we can house in that station for additional staffing. That is about a $130,000 renovation that we put into play. I was by there earlier today. It looks very nice. I would encourage you to stop by, take a look at it. Firefighters would be more than happy to show you. Station 4, which is on the east side, East 3rd, should be, we're doing a renovation there, about an estimate of 6 weeks. We should be completed. That station renovation was about $330,000. It's going to be included in the outside. The original color, that station was put into service in 1974. The original color was red. We're going to bring it back to the original red, right across from St. Charles Church. And landscaping is going up right now. You'll see a roll-off there, but a full new kitchen renovation, bathrooms, floor. It's going to look really nice. And I think community pride is important. And I think looking at that from the outside, Station 2, you would never know we just put $130,000 into it, but you're going to know when you drive by our most visible station that we've done something there. So RFQs are going out for Station 1 soon. So just know that that's happening for the reconstruction of Station 1. We did attend IU Athletics recruiting event as well. And so we did have some visitors. So we're doing the best we can to enhance our recruiting and attract candidates. Purchases, procurement, anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Procurement that you're going to see, we just spent, and we're going to spend a lot more. We have, this is actually coming in from last year's money, around $38,000 in fire gear, as we affectionately call it PPE, protective gear. So we do have 2 replacement vehicles for the prevention division. One is going to be for a deputy fire marshal as well, and then our community engagement officer. So that'll be about $85,000, or about $40,000 for one and about $45,000 for the second one. Personnel, we have 3 firefighters coming off probation, so they'll be full-time. We have 3 on light duty, 1 sick, 1 FMLA leave. This puts us down at a tremendous staffing disadvantage with our hiring process coming that we're doing right now with new firefighters that ends, I believe, March 12th. But we anticipate being down 15 firefighters for that, which puts a tremendous strain on our staffing and our overtime finances as well. So we are hiring for additional mobile integrated healthcare workers, as Chief Daffron said. We are currently, we've scheduled interviews over the next 2 weeks for that position, 1 additional deputy fire marshal and 1 additional administrative assistant. Chief Daffron talked about the MIH program. We did put in for a grant. We asked for just around $1.6 million to enhance that program and our staffing. We did receive notification that we are eligible for that grant. We have not received further notification for a monetary reward or award, so we're anxiously awaiting that word. But that would accelerate our program to be able to do the things that we would like to do. This will, I liken it to a baby, and it's a baby program right now, and if we raise the baby right, then we think that this, in the next 5 or 6 years, is something that we can be really proud of. So we're already seeing some wins, as you can see, just simple things like somebody is having trouble getting their medication, things like that, you know. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at, but as we go along, the model includes community paramedicine, so that is the trend across the United States, and somewhat in Indiana, especially in the metropolitan area of Indianapolis. So,
Who is the grantor of that
what's
grant?
that?
Who is the grantor?
It's the state of
State of Indiana.
Yeah, through ARPA, yeah. And the state has also, with the governor's incentives, with the healthcare incentives, one of the initiatives is the mobile integrated healthcare program across the, and right now we are one of, I believe we're the only fire department that has certified, we were certified by the state, so some sort of accreditation with the state, from Monroe County, essentially down to the river in Clark County. So they're trying to get more fire departments involved in this. There are hospitals that are involved in this sort of program that run their own ambulance services, that sort of thing. But we're in collaboration and partnerships here with Indiana University Health, and we actually just had a meeting with them today. So we think it's something that can develop over time, and it, you know, we're going to take our time to do it and make sure that it's set up for success, because it's really difficult, you know, if you go too fast and you fail at something to revert. So we're taking our time with it. We have a lot of state, I think we have a lot of people in the state that are looking towards Monroe County, especially the city of Bloomington, to develop this, and I think we're poised and primed for this type of program, I think, for the fire department, so. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a really quick question. Yeah. Because my daughter asked me about this. For your new building, what's going to happen to the dog? And is the dog going to be part of the reconstruction?
It's one of the best trained dogs that I've ever met. I'm sure that dog will stay in place. It's going to be a significant, obviously, reconstruction with additional square footage that'll be added to that. And it'll probably get a fresh new paint job.
Yeah.
So,
Good to hear.
all right.
Thank you.
New dots, new
With
spots.
the nice dots and that sort of thing, that's right.
All right. I don't believe we have any old business. Okay. Well, we have a major new business item, and that's election of officers. So does any member of the board wish to make a nomination for chair?
I nominate you. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to do that?
Who's
Is it-
the you?
Kim, I nominate our current president to continue being the chair.
Seconds?
So this is just the nomination phase, so are there any other nominations from any member for any other member besides Kim? No other nominations, so that closes the nomination.
Okay.
Now you can ask for motions.
All right. Can I get a motion for Kimberly Gray to serve as chair of the Board of Public Safety?
So moved.
Natalia, seconds?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So I'm keeping the gavel.
Yay, congratulations.
All right. Does any member of the board wish to make a nomination for a vice chair?
I nominate Natalia Galvan.
I second.
Any other nominations before we close the?
I've been happy to nominate everybody else, I guess, you know.
Okay, nominations are closed. Can I get a motion for Natalia Galvin to serve as vice chair of the Board of Public
So
Safety?
moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All righty. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Public comment?
Oh, sorry. Do we have any public comments?
I'm sorry, before that, has everybody signed their conflict of interest form now?
Yes, sir.
Last month.
Yes, sir.
Everybody did theirs?
I did.
Now, public comment.
Okay. And we have none online because we're not Zooming. So, all righty. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.